loneliness, fatigue, loss, and made other incredible sacrifices. And whereas with their selfless sacrifice, our armed forces have forged and defended the very idea of America, a promise of freedom and equality, democracy and justice, possibility and hope. We owe them an incredible debt that we can never fully repay. And whereas this year, the City of Port Angeles wishes to provide a special recognition to the members of the Coast Guard who have served locally and in our city. Recently, the Coast Guard approved a memorandum of understanding between, the City Council approved a memorandum of understanding between the United States Coast Guard and the Port Angeles Fire Department regarding EMT ride-along program. This memorandum created an alliance that allows members of the U.S. Coast Guard opportunities to enhance skill development. And whereas the city has recognized the Coast Guard in the Port Angeles Comprehensive Plan as part of the community profile. In the plan, the city recognizes the establishment of the air station at Edith Hook, noting it as the oldest United States Coast Guard station in the country. The city wishes to express its appreciation for all branches of service, those who have served or are currently serving locally and abroad. And whereas, furthermore, the city of Port Angeles has among its citizens, volunteers, and employees, individuals who have served in the United States Armed Forces, and we are reminded of our obligation to them to serve our veterans as they have heroically served us. And as we gather here today, let us not forget that freedom is never free, and our nation and our community is ever more indebted to their courageous service. Now, therefore, I, Kate Dexter, Mayor, on behalf of the City Council of Port Angeles, do hereby urge all citizens to join me in giving thanks to all of America's veterans who have placed our nation's security before their own lives, creating a debt we can never fully repay. And with great appreciation, we give thanks to those who have bravely served our country, among them past and present city employees at the City of Port Angeles. Our veterans represent the best of America, and they deserve the best America can give them. Thank you. We're sitting down. If there are any veterans in the room, if you can, okay, you all sat down too fast. Any veterans in the room, please stand up, or active duty.
Got a senior chief right there.
Okay, senior chief. Excellent, thank you. All right, I will pass the mic over to Kelly if you'd like to, or Commander Higgins, sorry.
Sure. I'll take this quick opportunity just to say I'm super thankful to be here. I've been the commanding officer down at the air station since August, so I'm pretty new back to the area, but I was stationed here in 2009 to 2013. So I've got a few lives saved under my belt, and I think this is a really amazing community. We get a lot of support here, and I think everybody knows that the waters of the Puget Sound and of the Strait of Juan de Fuca and then offshore are so cold that they're so dangerous. And I think I really see this community come together and help each other. So the mariners really come together and help each other. Whereas if you're in other areas of the country, Miami or some other places, you see people kind of drive by things that are going wrong. So I really love this community and how you guys come together and support the maritime industry and support the Coast Guard and support the 2,000 veterans that live in this area. It's a really amazing thing. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you again. All right. We are now at public comment, but I want to do late items. Before we do public comment, that's something we started doing recently, but I haven't asked to rework the agenda. So are there any late items from staff?
Mayor, no late items from staff this evening.
Right. Late items from council. Drew.
Madam Mayor, do we need to make a motion to excuse Amy?
All right, we can just do that as soon as I'm done with my late item. I had a request to write a letter of recommendation or a letter of support for a grant for the groups hosting the state baseball tournament. And so I just wanted to add that to the agenda under other considerations because I'd like council support to write it on behalf of our council. So I'm going to add that under late items. And excuse me, let's see. All right, so that brings us to public comment. Now, I know most of you are here to speak to LTAC. I can see that by the sign-in sheet. I'm more than happy to have everyone who's signed up speak. I also just want to present a possibility to you all that we do have 2 public hearings on tonight's agenda, the budget and property tax, and those need to start close to 6:30 or shortly thereafter. And so if we have a long public comment period, then we have to go directly to those items. And if you want to see the outcome of the LTAC vote, you will need to sit and wait through all of that. If you guys want to designate a few people to speak on behalf, I don't know if that's something you can organize right now. So this is just an idea I had when I got here tonight. To reduce the number of public comment, we could potentially do that item first, and then you all can go on with your evening instead of sitting through a budget presentation. Unless you would like to do that, you're welcome to stay, of course. But I know for some of the kids that might be a little dry. So anyway, just present that as an option, and I will go ahead and start down the list. So I guess basically if you are speaking to something and someone who's gone before you is saying basically the same thing, if you want to say I'm good, then we can get through the list a little faster. That would be great. Also, if you are joining us virtually and wish to speak, let me back up just a second. Everyone who's signed up is signed up for LTAC. The first public comment period is items on tonight's agenda, which that is, so that's fine. But for anyone who wishes to speak to other items or didn't get a chance to sign up, first public comment is items on the agenda. So if you are joining virtually, now is the time to raise your virtual hand if you wish to make a comment during the first public comment period. If you wish to speak to the budget or property tax, that is for the public hearing. I'm expecting all of you guys to be part of that, right? No? Okay. All right. So first person on the list is Carrie Chance. So I'm going to call a few people. And if you can line up, that'll make it more efficient. Carrie Chance, Sean Coleman, Dave Melnick, Jackson Melnick, Zach Moore, Mila Johnson, and Howie Riddell. That's a long list, but all right. So also quickly for folks who are not regulars, the public comment period is 3 minutes. I think we have a short enough list. We probably don't need to limit it to 2 tonight. You don't need to take the whole 3, but you can. And if you can state your name and whether or not you're a resident, you don't need to give us your address. And if you're in council chambers, the lights on the lectern will tell you if your time is running out. And go ahead, Carrie.
Okay. My name is Carrie Chance. I do live in the city. I cut mine down to 2 minutes, so I'm going to introduce myself. I am the executive director for the Juan de Fuca Foundation for the Arts and for the newly formed Port Angeles Concerts on the Pier organization. I'm here to respectfully ask that you do not approve the current funding recommendations of the Lodging Tax Committee. I believe that the voting procedures implemented made this final recommendation invalid and incomplete. The seemingly new voting regulations for this committee were introduced about an hour into the meeting, and they were in direct contradiction to previously stated and observed voting procedures. At just past the 1 hour mark, 2 of the 5 voting members were precluded from voting on multiple grant requests, and this inability to vote negatively impacted funding for many of the city's worthy and beloved events and organizations. By design and state regulation, the committee's members are directly affected by the tourism industry and therefore have a perceived conflict of interest in many of the votes. 2 of the 5 members benefit directly from tourism as owners and operators of lodging establishments. 2 benefit directly from lodging tax funding as representatives of tourism driving organizations. And in this case, the committee chair, being heavily involved in our community, has created perceived conflicts of interest due to her volunteerism. As a council member, Chairperson Carr must follow explicitly defined guidelines when it comes to voting, but the volunteer committee members have no clear standard voting procedures that would preclude them from voting that I can find in any RCW or committee procedure guidelines. And Carrie can attest to the fact that I've looked. I've asked for a lot of information. If we preclude the possible grant recipients from voting on grants that impact their organizations, then we must also preclude the lodging tax collectors from voting if that event will impact the amount of visitors that will stay in their lodgings. The fact that only certain members were made to abstain from the voting process is incongruent with the intent of this committee and the process. The consequence was detrimental to many of our community partners that are driving our city's tourism. I implore the City Council to make a motion to return the recommendations to the committee to reassess the unfunded and underfunded applicants that were impacted. In order to preserve equity, we must proceed as the committee was surely intended, to have equal voices on all matters and to work to infuse the city with the money collected to continue to drive the tourism that creates these funds. And I'd also like to note that the board president of both of my organizations has also sent a letter that states a very similar thing. So thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Sean?
Oh, I forgot to mention.
Sean, before you start, I just want to remind everyone, or share with everyone, the rules that while you will hear lots of things that resonate with you this evening, decorum of council is a request that there is no applause, there's no cheering, there's no jeering. You can be excited about what people are saying, but please no applause. It takes a lot of time and is not consistent with the matters of a business meeting. So thank you all for being here, and we want to hear from you, but please keep your thoughts to yourself on the comments. Thank you. Go ahead, Sean.
Sean Coleman, county resident, manage Lincoln Park BMX in town here. Dear council, thank you for being here. Please reconsider sending the budget recommendations from the LTAC committee back to the committee to review the operations event and LTAC priority allotments of the LTAC budget. A couple items I believe caused issues with the committee's review and selection of the grant applications. Standard procedures were not followed at November and September meetings. Voting recused voting members, where in the past that was not the practice. Classification and acceptance of applications even after legal review. Inconsistent scoring, understanding the scoring criteria and the vindictive scoring. Treatment of staff and other committee members during the meeting. Not following the standard public open meeting procedures by committee members proposing to add items to the vote that were not even on the September 26th LTAC agenda. I feel how we came about this. LTAC committee is required by RCWs, even though I feel council would prefer it to handle it directly. That has not stopped it from being heavily influenced by certain city council by ad hoc selections of adding non-local residents when there were many other qualified applicants, even with local event knowledge, overriding the LTAC committee priorities with political pressure from one organization who has had multiple LTAC meetings dedicated to them and having council increase operation limits. That organization did ask for 71% of all the operating budget, 19% of the overall budget, but started by wanting 50 and then 25% of the whole TAC budget in separate LTAC meetings in August and September. So I just ask that you remember all the other groups that are represented by LTAC. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Yeah. Yeah. I know it's exciting when you hear people talk and you like what they're saying. But one of the rules of our council is that you don't clap because it's a business meeting. So thank you guys for being here. And I'll just remind you again if you need another reminder. All right. Dave, go ahead.
My name's David Melnick. I'm a county resident and I am the president of North Olympic Baseball and Softball. I'm here today to respectfully ask that you reconsider the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee's recommendations and send them back for further review. Currently, our organization has received zero funding from the city LTAC, despite the significant impact our event will have on this community. In partnership with the city of Port Angeles, North Olympic Baseball and Softball has been awarded the Washington State Cal Ripken Baseball Tournament, the largest baseball tournament in the state. This tournament will bring 2,200 attendees for 4 nights and generate over 2,000 room nights, an incredible opportunity to showcase Port Angeles and drive the economic activity in our local businesses. The city attorney has reviewed our application and confirmed that it meets all the criteria to qualify for full funding from the LTAC. Despite this, the LTAC committee has recommended no funding for our tournament. This is a missed opportunity for the city, and I ask you send the committee's recommendations back for reconsideration. The funding is essential for us to host this tournament and maximize its positive impact on our community. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I look forward to your support in ensuring that Port Angeles fully capitalizes on this important opportunity. I want to say one thing more past from what I had written is I also have a kid that plays basketball, and without the funds that basketball doesn't get, a lot of these kids won't be playing basketball anymore. So that's all I got.
Thank you. And sorry I called you Dave. Jackson. If you can, yeah, there you go. If you can, perfect, you got it. That's just so people online can hear you too. You got a bigger audience than you can even see. Go ahead when you're ready.
Good evening, City Council members. My name is Jackson Melnick, and I'm 11 years old. I play baseball for North Olympic Baseball and softball, and I'm really excited to talk today about something special for our town. Next summer, we get to host a Washington State Cal Ripken baseball tournament right here in Port Angeles. It's the biggest baseball tournament in the state, and I'm so proud that our town gets to be the host. This past summer, we went to Wenatchee, and it was so hot. It was 110 degrees. It would be nice to have it in our hometown. We will have 2,200 players, families, coaches, and umpires coming here, staying in hotels, eating at our restaurants, and shopping at local stores. My favorite local store is Swain's General Store. This tournament is a huge deal for our community, and it will bring a lot of business to Port Angeles. As a player, I'm excited because I get to show everyone how great our town is. I'm proud that our team has been given this opportunity. It means a lot to us, and we want to make sure it as successful as possible. I know hosting this tournament will not only be fun for us, but it will also be a big boost for our local businesses and will help Port Angeles on the map for people from all over the state. I really hope you support us and make sure we get the funding we need to host this and make it the best tournament ever. Thank you for your time and for supporting youth baseball in Port Angeles. I'm so proud to be a part of this, and I know the whole town will be proud too. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackson. Well done. Zach.
Raise this back up here. Good evening, council. My name is Zach Moore. I wear many hats, but today I wear this one. Sorry. I'm the Wilder head coach. I'm the coach of the high school baseball team in Port Angeles. And as we know, youth sports plays a significant role in our community, not just for the development of our young people, but also a substantial contribution to the local economy. When local teams host tournaments, families from out of town travel here, bringing with them an influx of revenue that directly benefits our local businesses, including hotels, restaurants, and shops. This is a key point when we discuss the impact of youth sports and lodging tax revenue. I will strictly speak of a tournament that we ran last summer that had over 60 hotel rooms booked for one hotel for 4 nights. Investing in youth programs is not merely a benefit to our children, it's an investment in our future. These programs teach teamwork, discipline, work ethic, and leadership, skills that our youth will carry with them into adulthood. Furthermore, the return on investment for lodging tax funds allocated to youth sports and opportunities is significant. Events hosted like the Cal Ripken State Tournament and Port Angeles Youth Basketball will bring in thousands of visitors. This will dramatically increase the revenue generated from lodging taxes that you will get to reallocate for next year's recipients. Every dollar invested in youth sports programs, we see a multiplier effect as families gather to support their children, fill our hotels, eat in our restaurants, and explore our beautiful county. I urge you to reconsider how lodging tax funds are utilized. By committing a portion of these funds to enhance youth programs, we not only provide our young people with invaluable experience, but also strengthen our local economy. It's a decision that aligns with our vision of thriving community where our youth can flourish. I'll end with this. I read through the application process of the LTAX funds, and I can't help but recognize the vision set aside for the applicant to best utilize lodging tax funds to create a welcoming and inviting community with facilities and activities that increase tourism-related revenue through a sustainable visitor experience. What better way to do that than with our youth? Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Mila.
Good evening, City Council members. My name is Mila Johnson, and I'm a 7th grader from Stevens Middle School. I'm here tonight to ask you to please recognize giving funding to our youth programs. Without this funding, these programs will disappear. I'm proud to be a 4.0 student athlete, and for me, being a student always comes first. Basketball has taught me the dedication and determination I need to grow in school. Without it, I wouldn't be where I am today. Sports are about more than just games. They're about building, setting goals, and being part of something bigger than yourself. Other programs like No Boss Baseball losing funding is sad. These programs are vital for our town, our kids, and our future. I love seeing the even younger kids, like my siblings, have the chance to set goals for themselves and dream big, just like me. Some of us dream of playing college ball or even going pro one day. These programs give us hope and make us want to do better. One of the things I love most about our home tournaments is seeing new people and the diversity they bring to our town. When families aren't at games, they're shopping at local stores like Cedar and Salt or grabbing drinks from Frogtown. Our little town is filled with new energy during these tournaments, and I love it. Port Angeles is a small town, and without programs like these, where does that leave us? Call me selfish, but I can't think of anything more important than keeping us busy. I'm proud to be a Port Angeles athlete. Thank you for your time and for considering how much this matters to us. Let's go, PA.
All right. Thank you, Mila. I hope I said that right. Howie, go ahead.
Good evening, City Council members. My name is Howie Riddell. I am both a Port Angeles resident and also have been a business owner here for 23 years. This community, I can't promise I'm going to be as eloquent as these youngsters have. I can promise I will be as impassioned as Coach Moore. I was born here. I left. I came back. I believe in Port Angeles. I believe in you all. I believe in these kids. And like Coach Moore, I believe that all of these kids here need an opportunity. I'm here tonight, though, as the board president and acting executive director for the Port Angeles Youth Basketball Program. I'm asking you today, respectfully, to send the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee's recommendation back for further review. Currently, our organization received zero funding from LTAC, despite the clear impact that we have on the community. For over 20 years, the youth basketball tournaments were previously under the city's Parks and Rec purview, and the city ran them. 2 years ago, these tournaments were assumed by our nonprofit, Port Angeles Youth Basketball. And we did so with the understanding that the city would continue supporting these tournaments. We host up to 5 to 6 tournaments during the off season, which brings in players, coaches, officials, and families from outside the peninsula. Our largest tournament last year was 80 teams. To put it in context, we had 12 teams from PA, the rest were not from PA. Each of these teams has 10 players, and they usually travel with mom, dad, siblings, and others. So you can do the math in your head, the number of hotel rooms and restaurants that this affects. These tournaments are crucial not only for youth sports in Port Angeles, but also for generating business for our local hotels, restaurants, and shops during a typically slow time of the year. It's been said before that the youth basketball tournaments are the holy grail for heads in beds during the winter season, and I think that's true. We requested funds to help operate these tournaments. The city attorney has reviewed the application and confirmed that it meets all the criteria. I also wanted to bring to the attention that there's $187,000 of unspent LTAC budget money, meaning the funds are available to support us and other programs such as the marathon and also the Cal Ripken tournament. So I would, in summing up, I would ask that you reconsider and send back the recommendations for a more thorough review. We have a track record of supporting the community and putting money back into the LTAC funds. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Okay,
Lastly, I would also.
your time is up. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Want to make sure other people have a chance. All right, I'm going to read the next list. And again, if we wrap it up quickly, we could probably do this item first and then go to the public hearing. So I just want to present that again as an option. Next on my list, I only have one comment online, so I'm going to stick with council chambers for now, is Eric Johnson, Debbie Wright, Richard Wright, Madison Wright, Mary Sue French, Lori Mittman, and Janie McGee, maybe? I'm sorry, I can't read the last. If any of you want to give up your time and we can get done quickly, we can try to tackle this. But okay, thank you.
How are y'all doing?
Okay, sorry. Start with your name
All right.
and whether or not you're
I'm Eric Johnson Jr. Most of you guys know me as a coachee, and I'm here on behalf of the youth of small towns. I'm not going to simplify and say it's just sports because it's bigger than that. I'm kind of in the same boat as Coach Moore because I put everything I have into these kids when I coach, and respect is probably the biggest thing I put out to these kids, which into adulthood, which ties into life. I'd say I've got more than 10 calls from schools just in the sense of accountability and teaching the brotherhood of what family and team sports mean. And so to put a price on it, to have a group of people put a price on a generation, not just a sports group, is it's wild. I'm not asking for y'all to hear me wholeheartedly. I'm asking y'all to look at it as people. Shouldn't be a vote. Shouldn't even be a question. We're talking about a generation. How are we going to have mayors if we can't support them in something that they're passionate about? All my athletes know to respect who got them here and respect these people who hold your passion for you. Keep that passion. Doesn't matter what we got you for the sports. So we're just asking y'all to take a look at where you guys when you were kids. If y'all didn't have someone back in your funding, back in your YMCA, would you guys be where you are? That's all I got.
Thank you, Eric. Did I understand Debbie and Richard right? We'll skip. Okay, Madison, go ahead.
Hello, City Council members. My name is Madison Wright. I'm a 7th grade youth basketball player in Port Angeles. I'd appreciate the chance to share how important basketball is to me. It's thrilling to have tournaments held in Port Angeles. Basketball is my passion, and being able to play basketball in my hometown is amazing. I'm proud to see our hometown host our girls and boys youth basketball team, showcasing their talent and supporting local restaurants, hotels, and stores through bringing revenues. But to keep all this going, we really need to support from our city. Our basketball program has been around for a long time, and we want to make sure that it stays strong, especially with all these tournaments that help bring in people to Port Angeles. I hope the city council will support us and make sure that we will get the funding we need to keep these tournaments and running so we can keep playing and having fun in our hometown. Thank you for the time, and I hope that you will help us keep basketball in Port Angeles and keep it growing strong for the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Madison. Yeah, you can go ahead, but you gotta say your name because you're
Can I
not
go-
signed up.
Can I go for Debbie?
Yes,
Okay.
if you can pull the mic down just a teeny bit. There you go.
Like that?
Thank you.
Okay. Hello, City Council. My name is Nia Langdon, and I play for the 8th grade girls basketball team. I'm here for the same reason as everyone else. Even though I may be moving up at the end of the season, I still want to come up and help younger kids make the most of their AAU years. When tournaments are home, we get to represent our amazing town, and it helps with businesses for hotels, restaurants, and much, much more. From my experience, home tournaments are the best tournaments. I get to have family and friends come and watch my team play, and I get to hang out at home with my team. Thank you for listening to me talk about this topic. And yes, it's fun to make memories out of town with your team, and it does mean a lot to me. But it truly means the most to me and the rest of us. We get to represent PA and show off who we are at home. Thank you again, and please consider what I've said.
Thank you. All right, Mary Sue.
Well, at least it's right height. I'm Mary Sue French, and I'm a city resident. Thank you for allowing me to speak City Council. I want to start by saying that it was evident that the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee members took a great deal of time to read through the many proposals that were presented to them for the meeting held on November 13th. Considerable research was also done by those members, and it was obvious that they take their commitment to the advisory committee seriously. The meeting was extended for an additional 5 hours to cover all the requests. I'm talking to formally request the lodging tax budget recommendations presented in the November 19th City Council packet be sent back to the committee for further review and reconsideration and presented to the City Council at the December 3rd, 2024 meeting. I believe the motion to accept the recommendations from the November 13th meeting should not move forward without additional discussion by the LTAC committee. It's my understanding that past practice has been for all voting members to have an opportunity to vote on action items. Unfortunately, during the November 13th meeting, this process was not followed. Specifically, LTAC committee members who were recipients or held a relationship with an LTAC fund request were asked to recuse themselves from voting. This resulted in only 4 members voting and resulted in ties where motions failed. There are 3 non-voting members of the LTAC committee, and if the change in practices of those LTAC voting members recusing themselves is to be continued going forward, then perhaps a non-voting member could be allowed to vote during the time that happens, so that there's an odd number of members voting and avoiding the many ties that occurred on November 13th. Additionally, the several funding applications were not addressed by the committee, and these applications weren't discussed in full detail. You've heard many examples of that tonight. And so given these concerns, I respectfully request that the committee revisit the recommendations by November 26th to get the recommendations turned over in time for the December 3rd meeting. Thank you for taking the time to hear me tonight.
Thank you, Mary Sue. Lori.
Excuse me. My name is Lori Mittman. I am a resident of the city. I'm here today because there were a number of things that concerned me at the November 13th lodging tax meeting. The first is that there was a change to voting procedure, making it different from all of the previous 10 years that I have attended. This was the first time that certain committee members were restricted from voting on applications in which they have a personal involvement. By statute, the lodging tax committees are made to be an equal number of those that collect the tax and those that receive the tax. By design, the state has created a perceived conflict of interest, but they also designed for fairness in allowing this combination of committee members to vet applications and vote. The change in policy last week created a situation where the lodging tax collectors were able to strategically bundle events in their motions in order to block one or more other members from voting when known that those members would disagree. In addition, these lodging tax collectors ignored the scoring sheets. This negated the voice of the non-voting citizen members at large, making their voices irrelevant. Now comes to what I find to be the most disturbing about the meeting. Under no circumstances should a committee member be allowed to bully a fellow committee member, and under no circumstances should a committee member be allowed to disrespect city staff. This happened to such as an extreme as to draw the meeting out to 6 hours. It was extremely clear in witnessing the meeting that member Catlin Sullivan had a personal issue with member Victoria Jones, and it was clear that she thought the city legal staff was incompetent and would not accept his judgment on the application's eligibility. She would not let these things go for any reason, therefore drawing out the meeting and disrupting city staff, including not allowing them to get back to their other city duties, get timely or sufficient lunch or other breaks. I ask that City Council send the LTAC recommendations back to the LTAC to be reconsidered. I urge Council to send them back with the insistence that application scoring be used in earnest, as the average scoring reflects the voices of all members. Guidance should also be given that if legal counsel says that an application qualifies for funding, that should not be questioned. I also ask the City Council not tolerate disparaging, disruptive, and bullying behavior, and to remove Catlin Sullivan from the committee. Committee members serve at the pleasure of City Council and can be removed at any time. Please uphold a standard of zero tolerance for bullying and a standard for committee members to show respect to fellow committee members and staff, and uphold a spirit of community and compromise. Bullying can and should not be tolerated. We have no room for that in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Jeannie, no clapping, please. I know.
I'm Jeannie McGee. I'm a current resident of Port Angeles. I didn't grow up in this town. I grew up in Shelton. We moved up here in 2018. My son is in basketball with the Port Angeles. And this affects him and all of his teammates and all the other sports in the community. Not only that, but my family commutes from either Shelton or Yakima to come and attend the games. And it would affect them as well. We bring a lot of business into our community and it should be reconsidered.
Thank you. Last on the list in council chambers is Steve Rader Ginsburg. And then we have one online. While we're waiting for Steve to get up to the microphone, is anybody here for the public hearing for property tax or budget? Okay, John. I'm going to take that into consideration. Go ahead, Steve.
Hi, thanks, Mayor Kate. My name is Steve Rader Ginsburg. I am a resident of Port Angeles. I'm also the executive and artistic director at Field Arts and Events Hall. And on lodging tax, I just want to say, it was quite a bit of work. Yeah, a lot of went into what this RCW is and what's determined. Overall, I sat through a lot of the meeting. There is a lot of funds left on the table this year. The lodging tax money is collected to be spent, and everybody who has applied really sees and loves this city. My son was in Nobas, and there's a lot of things that bring people in. And if there is money to be spent, I think the intent is to generate economic impact and by supporting the community to allow people to come in. So I would urge the lodging tax or the city council to release the rest of the funds that are available to fund ones that were zeroed out. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And one online, Victoria, go ahead. We'll make sure we can hear you first, and then let me get my phone ready to time you real quick. All right. If we can unmute Victoria. Oh, there we go. Yeah, speak up just a little bit and then we can hear you, and I'll start your time now.
Okay, my name is Victoria Jones. I'm a resident of the county. Good evening, City Council. I am the Executive Director of the Port Angeles Marathon Association. I'm on various committees and boards in Port Angeles, and I am a voting member of the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. I am here today to formally request that the LTAX funding recommendation be sent back to the committee for further review and discussion. This request pertains to all recommendations except the capital allocations, which were fully funded without conflict, and one specifically is time sensitive to approval. I sent you all a letter with more detail that I'm going to speak about this evening. But moving forward, I believe that it is essential that we place greater emphasis on the recommendations of city staff and legal counsel to minimize personal bias and ensure consistency with city policies. To preserve the integrity of the funding process and to ensure fairness for all applicants, I respectfully request that City Council direct the LTAC to reconvene and conduct a more thorough and consistent review of the operations and events funding recommendations before proceeding with final decision. Thank you for your time and attention to this matter. I look forward to working together to strengthen the funding process and to ensure that it aligns with the best interest of our community and supporting year-round tourism.
Thank you, Victoria. All right, I am going to respectfully request that Mr. Ralston be patient, and he says great. Okay, so I would like to move this item up so that these fine folks can get on their way. It is a school night after all, unless the power goes out, and then maybe not. All right. So before we get started, I just want to say a couple of things to address a number of the both comments that we've heard and email communications we've received. And so some of this is to council and just sort of generally for the item. I want to start by saying thank you all for being here and thank you guys for doing a great job. I know it's hard not to clap, but I appreciate it. As council, we need to clearly communicate the importance of the lodging tax committee. Numerous individuals have expressed concern over the November 13th LTAC meeting. As a council, we have repeatedly discussed the fact that boards and commissions exist to make our jobs easier, to do the necessary homework and fact-finding to provide a solid recommendation to council. We charge all of our boards and commissions with these responsibilities so that we can efficiently achieve city business at our regular meetings and rely on the professionalism of our local volunteers to get into the details. When it comes to some of the comments we've heard, I want to be clear that we expect our boards and commissions to maintain professional relationships with one another. This principle has been solidified by 2 consecutive strategic plans that prioritize high-functioning relationships. It is not acceptable for board members to personally target one another, modify scoring to produce outcomes not demonstrated by the facts of an application. The City Council adopted Resolution 1124 on October 1st. The Lodging Tax Committee reviewed and established these scoring policies prior to making a recommendation to Council, and the scoring criteria are expected to be followed by the committee. In December, the City Council will be reviewing for adoption new municipal code for all boards and commissions. This new code will improve some of the processes and procedure challenges for this committee, including granting voting ability to all members of the committee. So that addresses a number of issues. And I don't usually do this, but I did make a motion because I think there was a lot of ways we could go, and I was trying to think of how we could efficiently handle this. So I'm going to make my motion, see if someone seconds it, and we can have discussion from there. I move to accept the committee recommendations for funded applications and request that the underfunded and unfunded applications be considered at the committee's first meeting of 2025 and direct staff to bring a recommended reserve amount for that reconsideration to the December 3rd City Council meeting.
I'll second that.
All right. So I'm making this motion as a way to ensure that the funded organizations can count on the funding that they have. As was mentioned in one of the public comments, we do have a capital project that is incredibly time sensitive that, since so many people here are here for sports, is the scoreboard for Civic Field, which we all know we would love to see replaced. And so we need that funding to go through. So I'm requesting that we keep the funding that has been allocated. And I do believe that we have enough between money that isn't used and reserves to potentially fund everything. That's not for me to decide right now, but I think gives us time to figure that out and implement some of the new rules, which will be voted on in theory on the 3rd of December, and then give staff time to schedule a meeting to make sure we have quorum, which is why I suggested the first meeting of 2025. So I'm going to stop speaking and see if other people would like to speak to the issue. Drew, go ahead.
First off, I want to make sure I disclose that I am connected with SquashCon, one of the applicants that has received funding in the current one. I'm the primary sponsor and sometimes help organizing. I do not receive any funding through SquashCon. In fact, it costs me money, but I do want to make sure that it is disclosed that I am connected with that in some capacity. I wanted to second this because I thought it was a good conversation for us to have. I would like briefly legal to summarize and make sure we all have the correct understanding. I've heard a lot of requests for us to send this back to LTAC in its current form, as well as other suggestions. LTAC operates a little bit differently because of RCW than other boards, committees, and commissions. And so what exactly council can and can't do as far as sending things back to LTAC.
So, excuse me, I've got a little bit of a cold, so I may be a little bit raspy. The first part of the motion is to accept those recommendations from LTAC that were fully funded. That is clearly within the realm of the council authority. As I interpreted, the second part of the motion is to reject the other recommendations, which also is clearly within the authority of the council. The next part of the motion was to send those recommendations back to LTAC for reconsideration. And yes, the city council may do that. And the last part of the recommendation, of course, that goes along with that is that the council will provide additional money for the LTAC committee to distribute after its recommendation. So yes, I believe that the motion is fully within the authority of the city council. And if you have any questions, if I went through that pretty quickly, so if you have any questions, I'll be glad to elaborate.
No, for the purposes of this specific motion, that helps me. That helps me.
All right, other council members. Navarro, go ahead. I want to mention that during the LTAC meeting, as I have in the last few, I have recused myself because as council members, we are not allowed to, well, council and committee members, as it states in our council rules of procedure, we are not allowed to vote on things that would directly give us financial benefit or go against the appearance of fairness doctrine. And my partner applied for LTAC funding and was funded in whole for one of his applications and funded in part for the other one. So I won't be voting on this and will be happy to recuse myself for the vote. And I also am happy to answer any questions by council about the meeting or any other questions that members might have. Thank you, Navarro. Latricia, go ahead.
Well, I do appreciate the motion and what you're trying to accomplish. And for me personally, and thank you, Bill Bohr, for that overview. I also sit on a committee where we do something similar to this. And it is not uncommon with committees for members that sit on a committee that have an application that come through that is for their entity that you work for. I work for Jamestown S'Klallam Tribe. So we do a lot of habitat restoration work and we do grant proposals for funding. So I sit on a board that just like this, we prioritize through a ranking system and a criteria the programs, and it is a lot of work. And looking at these applications, I mean, some of the applications are 27 pages, 17 pages, and looking at the scoring criteria, it was all over the place. And I think that there's a chance here for a lot of improvement. The scoring criteria, for it to be all over the place, it shouldn't be like that. If we have a well thought out ranking criteria assessment that is clear and concise, You really shouldn't have any zeros in there. But when I was looking at the questions for marketing and for operations, I'm like, how do they expect operations to, because operations, you're funding your operations for that entity. And they're asking about wayfinding signs. I'm like, that's a capital project. Why are we having that as part of the criteria? So I think that there's room for change. And I think that's something that we as a council need to consider, that we redo. We have actually a professional that comes in and can redevelop the criteria with a weighted score associated with those, that we're not involved with it. So where it's unbiased, with clear definitions of what that means. But again, this is a lot of work. I appreciate the effort that has been put in there by staff. And you are right. There is no reason that committee members, they should have focused solely on the score, not on each other. And I'm sorry that that happened, and I'm disappointed that it happened. But I also kind of feel like some of the people that submitted their applications, also when you submit your request, you should also be thinking that there are other entities in the city of Port Angeles. And 71% of the budget to one entity, although they're allowed to do that, that's an awful lot, especially when that entity has over 50,000 people that walk through their door, according to their application. But put under the basketball and baseball, it's, maybe 2,000 people or 3,000 people that come. And I fully support our youth sports, and I think that those should have been funded. There was funding available in there, and there was actually a motion to tap into those. And it was Victoria's motion, and I thought it was well thought out and that it should have been approved and moved forward on. So Kate, I thank you for coming up with a motion that would help to address that. And I think that we need to not be conservative and tap in those and leave that 25% in there.
Thank you. Can I just point of information really fast?
Yes, a point of information, and then we'll go to Brendan.
Just so the committee is aware, every year the Lodging Tax Committee reviews our application and goes through it. And Ben and I are planning on working very closely at the beginning of next year to come up with some draft proposals for the committee moving forward. One of the things we've heard is how challenging it can be to wade through some of the applications and to make it more to have some criteria that is strictly unbiased. And I think Ben and I have committed as chair and staff to work together to help make that a more streamlined process as we work through our funding round for 2026, which we do in 2025.
Thank you.
Can I just add to that? Sorry. There was a recommendation to increase the number of members on LTAC. I like that recommendation because I still believe
we have
people need to actually have themselves.
Okay, we have on December 3rd the boards and commissions the proposed ordinance change, which will address that. Brendan.
Yeah, extremely disappointed to hear about this extremely long meeting, the way that sometimes some of this was handled. We make appointments to the lodging tax, we think them through, we vote on them, and sometimes that's not always a unanimous decision, and it is what it is. And I would much rather see all of this get funded, of course. The likelihood of that happening is probably, and 100% would be great, right? Fund everything, 100% would be lovely. But we aren't able to do that. I have been torn what to do here. Either try to send it back or see if there's something else on the table. And I still actually haven't made up my mind yet. I really, I think that the mayor made a pretty good attempt at trying to sort of right that wrong in this our motion to fund everything that's funded currently and then come back and find a way to distribute funding to some of these other projects. But yeah, I hope that in the future we can do a better job at making things being a little more thorough in our picks to the committees and do a better job of making the policy that the applicants can apply in a way that's easier.
Lindsay, do you want to speak to this? Are you able to?
How's my audio?
Your audio is good.
Okay. The idea that people would vote on something that benefits their own personal financial interest is what in other places we would call corruption. And that to me is the fundamental issue here. That's a procedural issue that I think the proposal on the table gets us to a good compromise and moving forward. But if there were people voting on proposals that would fund their own household's income in the past, then the appropriate thing to do was to stop that action. And people need to recuse themselves if they have a personal financial stake. That is the definition, textbook definition of conflict of interest. So it sounds like the committee did the right thing in requiring those recusals. And the structure of this committee is defined mostly by state law. So, we're kind of stuck with this idea that some of the people who potentially put in applications are people who sit on the committee. But if their application is under consideration and they get personal financial benefit from that application, then they have to recuse. So that to me is the issue here. And it sounds like Deputy Mayor Carr handled it properly by requiring those recusals. I think the motion on the table sounds good, and I think we should move it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Okay, we'll let Navarra recuse herself. For those of you who don't speak council language, recusing means that you step out, you don't vote. So she leaves the room, which is of course wide open, but she's gonna go back there. So we take the vote, she doesn't get to vote, she doesn't know how we voted, and then she comes back. All right, so we have a motion. Lindsay, since your camera's on, I'm going to try unanimous consent and we'll see if it works. So we have a motion to accept the committee recommendations for funding allocation for funded applications and request that the underfunded and unfunded applications be considered at the committee's first meeting of 2025 and direct staff to bring a recommended reserve amount for that consideration to our December 3rd meeting. Anyone opposed to the motion, please state your opposition. All right, hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. So you all can stay tuned for early 2025. Thank you all for being here and for following the rules so nicely. Thank you guys for coming and sitting here. Who knew you were going to get a civics lesson in addition to playing sports? All right, thank you all. And we'll take a quick break so you all can, you're welcome to stay, but we will not be offended if you leave. So we'll take a 5-minute break. All right, we need to go ahead and get restarted. So. All right. All right, got a little gavel on the Formica. Okay, we have two, as I mentioned earlier, two public hearings. John is the one we stayed for, but he's leaving, maybe. Nope, his briefcase is there. All right, so we're going to start with our first public hearing, which is adoption of the 2025 budget, which is item F1. I'm going to flip to that. And we are going to start with, I'm going to turn it over to Serena, and then we will.
Mayor and Council.
Yes, sorry.
Let's kick this one off.
Okay, sorry, Nathan, go for it.
So Council, we have a short presentation for you this evening on the 2025 budget. And Serena, if you can go to the next slide, I want to start out with just the great work that went into the 2025 budget by City Council, city staff, and most importantly, the Finance Department. And just really grateful for the teamwork that went into ultimately balancing the budget. The city total budget right now is balanced at $156.7 million. That is $32.1 million in capital investments that are planned for 2025, as well as it is an overall 15.2% decrease to the budget compared to 2024. Next slide, please. So Council, when looking at the general fund, both revenues and expenditures are balanced at 27 million. We have maintained 25% in reserve funds. In addition to that, we have only a matter of 287,000 planned for one-time expenditures relative to the general fund itself for 2025. Next slide, please. So Council, it's important to share that we have built into this budget a number of actions as well as staff planning for implementation of the new strategic plan, including a focus on community resilience, citywide resource optimization, housing and infrastructure development, as well as maintenance and connectivity. Those factors have all been built into this budget. Next slide, please. And Council, as you know, we start the budget early in the year. We begin with staff drafting new capital facilities and transportation plan items. Those are built into the capital budgeting process, which then moves forward to Council in June and July for approval, as well as in the month of June, we start to see staff actually entering the budget at the staff level. In August and September, senior management, including myself, are reviewing those budgets, having individual budget meetings for each of the different divisions at the city. And then finally, in early October, we distribute the balanced budget to City Council and then proceed with a number of steps, including the council work session that occurred in October as well. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Director Carrizosa, who can get us into a lot more details relative to the financing of the budget.
Thank you, Manager West. So we are just going to do a very high-level overview of the All-City funds, as well as a little bit into the general fund. Just recognizing that we did have that work session on October 22nd. That did include quite a few details in every area of the city's budget, and there are certainly a lot of things that we could talk about. And so for the sake of time, we're just going to do a very high-level look at that. And we'll start with the All-City revenues. So these are city revenues for all funds. And I do want to note that these charts have been updated since the preliminary document, and that does reflect the proposed Third Amendment changes, as well as projects that were carried into the 2025 budget. So both of those items are reflected here. Citywide, again, our revenue is $156.7 million. That's an overall reduction as compared to 2024, and that's the amended budget. So we're looking at that Third Amendment of about $28 million, and that's due to the use of reserves that's expected for those one-time capital projects, as well as some transfers and grant revenue that we're not anticipating will occur in 2025 for those large projects as well. Overall, we're seeing about a 2.5% increase for taxes citywide, and we are seeing all sales tax collection types are seeing those slight increases across all areas. our permit revenue decrease was due to yearly actuals at the time that we were building the 2025 budget. And so just as a reminder, it is the first year of those fee waivers for housing. And so we are adjusting those estimates to reflect some actuals. As an update for 2024, we are starting to see those permits that were kind of towards the end of the year and still being processed are coming through. And so there might be some opportunity to amend the budget in 2025 to reflect that for those revenues if they do meet expectations. We also are expecting a reduction in total grant revenue. And again, that's due to changes for projects. We had a number of very large projects that occurred in 2024 that were associated with grant funds. And so we're not expecting those in 2025. We're also seeing some changes for our allocations. So these are charges from one department to another for services provided. So we're seeing increases there, as well as increases for utility revenue collection. With the exception of decreased revenue expectations in the industrial electric collection area. And then looking at our miscellaneous revenue, again, these are revenues that are collected for investment interest earned primarily, as well as rentals and leases and internal service charges. And so changes in this area do include an increase for transfers to our self-insurance fund, and those are for insurance for both liability insurance and for employees' medical insurance. And we're also seeing in this area the use of opioid settlement funds that have been, that's the first year of our use here. So we are seeing that. In our non-revenue area, we're seeing a decrease of about $700,000 for the repayment of the interfund loan from water to solid waste. So the reduction actually just reflects the initial $1.5 million transfer that occurred earlier in 2024. So the transfer will not occur again in 2025, but there will be the repayment of about $700,000, and that's what's reflected there. And then finally, in our other financing sources, we do have transfers from utilities to corresponding capital. That's where these are tracked. So within our CFP, when we are including the transfers from operations to capital, this is where we track that in our budget. And so we also did have some additional transfers in 2024 that were within the CFP. So those were one-time amounts to accommodate those projects and prevent rate increases that we're not expecting in 2025. So as we look at our city-wide revenue, a little less than half of the revenue is collected from charges for services, the majority of which are from utilities at about 82.1% of that entire category. Internal charges make up about 11.8% of this category. And so if we take those two items combined, it's about 93.9 or just about 94% of this entire portion of this category for the charges citywide. Taxes make up about 11% of revenue citywide in 2025, and those are largely the property, sales, and utility tax, which make up about 74%, with transportation benefit district at about 7%. And then our intergovernmental revenue makes up about 7% of all collections citywide, and again, those are primarily grants. So as we look at our all city expenditures, we are expecting, again, about a $28 million decrease as compared to 2024. And again, those are due to changes for capital projects. And so it is important to note, as we're talking about changes and decreases for capital projects, that it does not mean that we are not placing funding into those capital projects. It simply means that there were some very large projects that occurred in 2024. All of the projects that were reflected in the CFP are also in the 2025 budget. And so it's just a matter of the total amount of spending that's occurring in 2025 as compared to 2024. Additionally, anything that's unspent in 2024 will carry into 2025. And we can partially see that in the third amendment. And those will be noted in more detail later on in this presentation. So as we look at our personnel, wages, and benefits combined, we have a $1.1 million increase. That's due to expected cost of living increases that are within the budget, as well as some salary adjustments that are expected in some areas. And we're also seeing increases for total medical benefits as well for the cost there. We do have an addition of a capital projects inspector, a utility worker 2 position in the water wastewater fund, and also a part-time information support specialist in the IT department. We also have temporary positions planned in HR and CED to assist with our ERP implementation. And then as we look at our supplies category, largely the change that's seen there is about a $6 million reduction for power purchased, and that was for primarily industrial electric. Looking at our other services and charges, again, we have increases for insurance premiums, not just only for employee benefits, but also for our liability insurance. We're also seeing some market changes that have increased transport costs for solid waste services. Up here in the capital facilities plan. And again, those are those one-time large transfers that occurred in 2024 and are not expected in 2025 that are reflected here as well. Looking at capital, we do have a reduction in large projects that occurred in 2024. We are still expecting a number of projects in 2025, many for pedestrian and street improvements. And then again, once again, anything unspent in 2024 will carry into 2025. So as we look at our all-city expenditures, the largest category within this entire city is of about 28% is our other services. The majority of that is what you would consider for the primary functions of the city. So our communication expenses, travel, software and maintenance needs. Almost 24% of the city's budget is capital. And 22.7% of the city's budget is for salaries and benefits combined. And so as we're looking at our all city fund balances, so the line in blue is our required fund balance levels. And then demonstrated here is our estimated 2025 ending fund balances and how those compare to that requirement. So largely all funds are meeting or exceeding budget expectations. There are some areas that are falling slightly below fund balance requirements at the end of 2025. However, we are seeing year to date some higher revenue collection than anticipated in the budget. And so we do anticipate that by the end of the year, those areas that are falling slightly below will reach those budget expectations. There is one area for the solid waste fund that is demonstrating unrestricted funds only. So there are some restricted funds that are held within solid waste for debt and for post-closure, but we are only demonstrating unrestricted amounts there. This area will be closely monitored as we move forward due to higher than expected transport costs that have resulted in a lower cash balance than was anticipated. And we are expecting that staff will be bringing options forward to council prior to year end for consideration to address the cash balance issue, because we are required to meet certain requirements per our bond covenants associated with the landfill bluff. And so finally, we're going to do just a very high level overview again in the general funds. And we'll start with our general fund revenues. So we have about $26.8 million in revenue collection forecasted in 2025. It's about a $1.7 million decrease as compared to the 2024 budget, or about 6%. And so just walking through each of those categories, for our taxes, the forecast is in line with our amended budget. It does include a 1% increase as allowed for property tax of roughly $51,000. And that does include revenue for new construction and for refunds. We are seeing a decrease in overall utility tax collection, largely due to changes for the industrial electric customer. Our permits are seeing about a $300,000 decrease. And as I mentioned, the 2024 collection is coming in higher than anticipated when we originally did forecast these, so that we would anticipate that if they do meet budget or exceed budget, we would be bringing something back in the first amendment for 2025 for that. As we look at our intergovernmental revenue, these are grant revenues, and so we are seeing some changes there. Our rediscovery program is now directly reimbursed rather than passed through the city. And so we're seeing a reduction there for that program of about $400,000. And we're also seeing a reduction of about $1.8 million for the HVAC project that was funded through American Rescue Plan Act funding, which is considered grant funding. But we do anticipate an increase of about $400,000 through the RAISE grant in supportive positions in 2025. As we're looking at changes in our charges for goods and services, that's almost entirely due to allocated expenses of about $780,000. In our miscellaneous revenue area, this is the planned increase of about $384,000 for our opioid settlement funds, as well as we're seeing a slight increase for investment interest earnings. Looking at other financing sources, these are changes in transfers that have increased to offset affordable housing for the housing administrator position, and about $38,000 from the lodging tax for administration of that fund. So looking at our general fund revenue, it's quite a different picture from our citywide revenue. Our taxes make up 61.1% of the general fund. 94% of that category is property sales and utility tax. And so the majority of all the revenue within the general fund is relative to those three sources. Within our charges for goods and services, which make up about 27% of all general fund revenue, 87% of that is from allocations. We're also seeing rental, planning, and cemetery fees that are included there. And in our intergovernmental area, again, those are primarily grants and state shared revenues, which make up about 5.5% of general fund revenue, with permits making up about 3.6%. And then I do just want to briefly note that the three major tax collection areas of property sales and utility tax combined with allocations comprise about 81% of all the general fund revenue in 2025. So those four areas are making up the majority of the revenue within the general fund that support those services. So looking at our general fund expenditures, the majority of expenditures within the general fund are for salaries and wages, as well as personnel benefits. So combined for both of those items, we have a $1.4 million increase to salaries and benefits planned in the general fund. We have a reduction planned in supplies for computer replacements that occur each year. Those have been moved into our IT department, and that was a 5-year replacement plan that we started about 5 years ago. And so 2025 will be the first year that we don't see those come from departments, but rather go into the IT fund. Looking at our other services and charges, we have a reduction of about $320,000 for the comp plan. So the entire amount for the comp plan and for the grants that are associated are in the 2024 budget. It's anticipated that we will see an amendment for anything that carries over from 2024 into 2025. We also have the reduction of about $381,000 for the pass-through for the rediscovery grant that is not anticipated in 2025, and the reduction for the American Rescue Plan Act grant funds that occurred in 2024. And then in the intergovernmental area, we have, again, the $1.8 million reduction for the HVAC transfer, as well as lower transfers planned in the CFP that were coming from the general fund. And so as we look at our general fund expenditures, about 67% of all expenses are for personnel costs. So as I mentioned, the majority of the general fund expenses are for salaries, wages, and benefits, with about 18.5% coming from other services and charges. And again, those are listed on the chart off to the side for things like professional services, equipment services, utilities, travel and training, insurance, and repairs and maintenance. 11% are going to transfers to other programs. So those are things like in support of the streets, Medic One transfers for capitals, expenses, as well as debt service and code enforcement. And then in total, 86% of all general fund expenses go towards staffing resources or transfers that are in support of other city programs. And so since we posted the preliminary document on the city's website, there have been some final updates and proposed changes that have occurred to the 2025 budget. And those are things that are also reflected in the third amendment to the 2024 budget. So our expenditures have increased about $7.4 million. These are due to projects that were deferred from 2024 into 2025. So these are projects that have not yet started and do not have any spending on them. And we are moving those projects in their entirety into the 2025 budget so that that's available starting January 1 for use. Also included on the slide under the the wastewater CSO projects area is the closure of the CSO fund, which is also included on tonight's agenda, as well as within the third amendment to the 2024 budget. So it's also reflected in the 2025 budget here as part of the $7.5 million change for those expenditures.
And so finally, the budget pulls planning and citywide goals that were built by council and the community into operational services by providing the funded needed for those goals. In 2025, services will be maintained without impacting the city's fiscal position, which enabled the city to continue to build core services, balance the budget for a sustainable future, and provide affordable and exemplary services to our community. And so we are kind of towards the end of our budget process. We've had a number of work sessions and presentations about this 2025 budget. And so tonight we do have a few things planned relative to the 2025 budget, which does include the opening of the public hearing on the 2025 budget, as well as this presentation and the first reading of that ordinance. We also have the property tax public hearing continuation, the adoption of the ordinance and resolution. And then on December 3rd, we are looking for adoption of the 2025 budget, as well as the continuation of the public hearing and the second reading of that ordinance. And so council tonight, staff does request that you open the public hearing on the 2025 budget, that you continue that public hearing to the December 3rd meeting, and that you conduct the first reading of the ordinance adopting the 2025 budget. And then I will be available for any questions council may have, as well as any of the staff members present tonight.
Thank you very much. All right, I'm going to read the ordinance first because I tend to forget that. An ordinance of the City of Port Angeles, Washington, adopting the 2025 budget for the fiscal year ending December 31, 2025. And I will go ahead and open the public hearing. If there's anyone who wishes to speak at the public hearing, make your way down. If you are virtual and wish to speak on the budget public hearing, please raise your hand now and we'll call on you. And John, go ahead when you're ready.
Am I on? Yeah, John Ralston, City of Port Angeles resident. With all these people here tonight, I thought we were having an STR meeting.
Too soon, John, too soon.
Yeah, it was great. I thought it would have been a great time for the Coast Guard officer to do some recruiting for the females that were in here. Or the city could have been advertising for 911 operators. Anyway, I'm going to, at this particular time, I'm going to talk about two things. One, I realize the city's going to build or pave from Lincoln to A Street, 8th Street from Lincoln to A. I'm still very concerned about the bike lanes. I think the bike lanes, when they're intermingled with car traffic, give the perception of safety. It is not safe. People are still going to ride their bicycles going opposite of traffic, just as they do on First Street all the time. The only safe bike lanes in Port Angeles are the Discovery Trail and from Ray Street from 8th going south. So I'm opposed to you guys doing it, even though that it's going to happen, and I'll continue to bark. The other thing is, I don't know where it is as a line item within your budget, but it's spending money or deferring money. And that comes to the 911 center and the emergency operations facility. Way too big in the buildings and way too expensive. I would encourage the city to strongly consider walking, because there needs to be, unless there is substantial changes. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I don't have any hands online, so we will continue the public hearing and open it up for council questions and discussion. Anything from council tonight? All right, I don't hear anything, so we will move on to item F2. I did, because I always forget. So, yep. So we'll move on to the ordinance levying the 2024 property tax collection. Levying 2024 property tax for collection in 2025. That's what my title says. So Nathan, do you want to take that, or do I go straight to Director Carrizosa? Okay.
Good evening. So this is the continuation of the public hearing regarding the property tax levy that will be collected in 2025. Tonight is also the second reading of the ordinance and the reading of the resolution authorizing the levy and the maximum allowable 1% increase. As a reminder, the levy does include the full 1% allowable increase per state law. And that increase is expected to be $51,074.13 in 2025. With our total property tax collection estimated at $5.2 million. We do anticipate that the levy rate will change to about $1.61 in 2025 for every $10 of assessed valuation. So that means that on average, homeowners will see an increase of about $8.49 for a home valued around $300,000 in the previous year of the assessment. Total individual increases will vary, and that just depends on the value of the home, with the total levy amount increasing 1%. So the 1% allowable is for the entire levy. And it's not specific to properties. So tonight we are asking council to continue the public hearing for the November 6th meeting and to adopt the ordinance and resolution authorizing the levy of 2024 property tax for collection in 2025.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and read those again. An ordinance of the City of Port Angeles, Washington, levying regular ad valorem property taxes for collection in the fiscal year 2025 and directing the city clerk to certify said amount to the Board of Clallam County Commissioners. And I'm also going to go ahead and read the resolution. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Port Angeles, Washington, pursuant to RCW 84.55.120, authorizing an increase in the regular property tax levy for 2025. And I will continue the public hearing if anyone wishes to speak on property tax. Okay, I don't have anyone in council chambers and I don't have anyone online. So I'll close the public hearing. Are there comments or questions from council or a motion to approve? And if someone is going to make a motion, I recommend you just move to adopt both the ordinance and the resolution in one motion.
I'll make a motion to adopt the ordinance of the City of Port Angeles resolution or Washington levying regular and valorem property taxes for collection in the fiscal year 2025 and directing the city clerk to certify said amount to the Board of Clallam County Commissioners and to approve the resolution for the City Council of the City of Port Angeles, Washington, pursuant to RCW 84.55.120, authorizing an increase in the regular property tax levy for 2025.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to approve both the ordinance and the resolution. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none. I know how this vote is going to go, I think. I know. So all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Lindsay gives a thumbs up as an aye, rather than audio. Those opposed?
Oppose.
All right. Thank you. The motion passes. All right, that brings us back to our consent agenda. Is there anything anyone would like to add to the consent agenda? Drew, go ahead.
Yes, I propose that we add G1, the 2024 Budget Amendment 3. G2, authorize closure of existing debt service fund 216 and combined sewer overflow fund 463 and waive the second reading. And then J1, the new Washington State fuel vendor PetroCard contract number 08721.
All right, anyone opposed to adding those items? Okay.
Mayor, if I could just mention one other thing that hasn't happened yet, if you wanted to add the excusing of Councilmember Miller, that could also be added.
Yes.
And I would like to also excuse Councilmember Miller as well, please.
And I would just like to suggest, rather than talk about it, if people are okay with it, I'm happy to give more information, but if it's okay with everyone, we could add the letter of support for the baseball tournament grants. Okay. Anything anyone would like to pull? Okay. Quick question for the clerk. If we're going to, the proposal for item G2 is different than what's in the council packet. It is proposed to add it with the waiving the second reading. So I just need to state that when I read it. I've done it before, but I don't remember.
Stating it would be good. I'll note that in the record.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and read the consent agenda then. The City Council minutes of August 27 and November 6, 2024. Expenditure report from October 26th, 2024 to November 8th, 2024 in the amount of $5,282,419.61. Agreement for services first due. MOU between the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs and the City of Port Angeles. Chip seal project CON 2023-18 final acceptance. I Street Substation Switchgear Upgrades CON 2021-47 final acceptance. Poll testing CON 2024-19 final acceptance. Budget amendment number 3. Authorize closure of existing debt service fund number 216 and combined sewer overflow fund number 216 and waive the second reading. Letter of support for local baseball tournament grants. A new contract, Washington State Fuel Vendor, PetroCard, contract number 08721, and excuse Councilmember Amy Miller from tonight's meeting. Any questions, comments, or a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as read. Anyone opposed to the motion, please state your opposition. All right, hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. So we've now done the time-sensitive items in case the power goes out. We will not need to continue the meeting for everyone who's listening. All right, that brings us to item I1, which is a discussion of legislative priorities. And I'm going to turn that over to Nathan to start.
So Mayor and Council, tonight before you, we have a number of possible recommendations for legislative priorities. I think it's important to share that Councilmember Sherman Warren, who's on the call this evening, is also representing the city on the Legislative Committee for Association of Washington Cities. He's also provided some written input as part of this packet. I think it's important to share that as Council developed the strategic plan, many of the items that would become legislative priorities were incorporated into that strategic plan. So the items that have been suggested by staff as a starting point for what is a lengthier legislative session at the state legislature in 2025, we're suggesting consideration of items from the strategic plan, including items that have also been highly discussed by council, and those include adequate and non-regressive tax structure, child care support, Elwha watershed protection, public safety funding, reducing barriers for state funding, Highway 101 truck route, and a 2.5 million directed appropriation relative to the city's housing pilot project. So at this time, those are staff recommendations, and council, I would encourage the mayor to go around the room to get input from each council member, sharing those council member priorities so that we can track those and ultimately bring them back in the form of a legislative briefing paper.
All right, thank you. All right, I'll start with Lindsay.
Yeah, part of me thinks we could actually fit all of this into a single page, but I'm also hesitant about watering things down. AWC's priorities do include public safety, so I'm curious what we'd be adding beyond that to that conversation. I do think it's important for us to emphasize things that are specific to City of Port Angeles. Highway 101 truck route is one of those that we might even be a little late at this point in asking for funding. I mean, as well as the 2.5 million for a housing pilot project. All of those things are really going to be dependent on whether the state moves forward with adequate non-regressive tax structure. And there's a number of potential policies that will be in play in the next legislative session. So I absolutely think we need to keep that at the top of our priorities, as we've done in the last few years, because really everything else that we're asking for depends on that. Otherwise, we're going to be left with an austerity budget, or we're going to be left with, working people and poor people paying disproportionately more in taxes than the ultra rich in Washington. So I think we can fit this all together, but I do want us to keep it to one page.
Thank you, Lindsay. Brendan.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with just going with that.
Navarra.
I'm also fine with this list. I think they're all really important things. I think, as Lindsay highlighted, focusing on or being able to highlight projects that are specific to us is very valuable. Last year, I testified on behalf of some of the public safety funding bills. And I think that why that was valuable is because there were specific bills that were very relevant to the city. And I think that if we include public safety funding without calling out some specific bill numbers, I don't think that that is going to be an effective ask. And I think we need to explain exactly what we are looking for out of that. And I think it makes it more impactful when there are bills that we can support, which I think gets to the next one on the list, which is reduce barriers for state funding. That was essentially the ask in our last legislative priorities document, that a lot of the, basically we were asking for the ability to councilmanically levy some taxes around public safety, and it failed. But if there were things like that I think are very tangible, that very much help our city, and our community in the public safety space, I think if there are things like that, then I think that would be valuable to include. But other than the very specific ones to Port Angeles, like a watershed protection, which, as we've talked about at length, has a very distinct connection to us, the truck route and our housing pilot project, and of course, non-regressive tax structure, I think if there are ways that we can talk about specific bills, then that would make, I think those would make our asks better. I'm also a little sad that Steve Rader Ginsburg left, because he and I had a meeting a few weeks ago, and he mentioned that they are asking the legislature for some to fund a project of theirs. And I am hoping that, as we've done in the past, that even if it's not in our one-pager, that if there are projects that come our way that we hear about from community organizations that are also seeking funding through the state, that we are able to advocate on their behalf as well, or through the feds. And I think, I'm just going to say it, I think we're facing a fairly uncertain future when it looks to our federal funding programs that we've had and been applying to most recently. And I know that a number of, nonprofits and community organizations are starting to plan for an inevitability in cuts to funding. And so I think our state is very robust when it comes to, ensuring that, our public health and safety programs continue to be funded. But as we look to things like the arts or, sports programs, which obviously have already faced cuts, I think it's really incumbent on us as we move forward to make sure that we are being the best advocates that we can be for our community as we're all dealing with an uncertain funding future.
Thank you, Navarra. Drew.
I mean, at this point, I'll mostly just be echoing the other council members. I like what staff has put together, and I also really appreciate Lindsay's list and the way he prioritized. I don't see any particular things to change other than, again, making sure we can turn this into a one page while simultaneously not diluting it to the point of being useless. And I also agree that we need to, when we can find specific bills that pertain to things, making sure we call those out and support those to the best of our ability, I think would be important as well.
Thank you, Drew. Latricia.
Yeah, I think we need to, I don't know, be selfish, highlight the specific things that have been on our list for a while. I mean, we've been talking about Highway 101 truck route for a long time. The Elwell watershed priority, big priority, and the city's housing pilot project. We still are in a housing crisis, and for affordable housing. But I really do like the idea in Lindsay's paper around childcare, about supporting universal childcare. And that you had in there. I was like calculating, if you did universal childcare, 7% on average, people would be paying $450 a month for childcare, $400 or $500 a month, versus what people are paying up to $1,000 a month. And I think that is worth really advocating for when we talk about it, but also the taxes, the tax structure. We've been advocating for that. No, one pager front and back is fine. That makes it 2 pages, right? But you can always hand to the legislative director the white papers, so that the legislature only gets the 1 page, but work with the legislative director with the staff, with that legislature, to push forward on other things. But I think, again, we need to be a bit more proactive. We've talked about being more proactive when it comes to the truck route. And I guess I would like to know where we're at with that. What are our steps? What are our plans? Because we've talked about, well, should we, make the step of hiring somebody so that we get it in the state's budget? And I know that the governor's asking for just maintenance level budgets because of their budget concerns. But what are our steps? What are we doing so that we get that in there, so that we're not always feeling like we're behind at the 8 ball, so that we're being more proactive at trying to get funding for that? So I guess that's my question. Where are we at with that? But we got a lot of needs for our community, and I'd really like us to highlight the needs of our community and funding needs for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Latricia. I like the focus on, I think all of it you can make the argument all of it is local, but I think if we're going to do, maybe we do 4 on the left side, if it's a similar layout. I know we're supposed to do 3, but I agree that adequate and non-regressive tax structure should stay at the top. And then I could be persuaded to mix it up, but I would love to see also the Elwha watershed protection, 101 truck route, and the housing pilot project be on the left side, regardless of what kind of budget we're expecting. I think part of the reason for the Elwha watershed protection is that I think we need some legislative action to back up. It remains to be seen with a new commissioner what direction they go, but I think they may need he may need some legislative support for some of the things that he's talked about doing in order for them to actually be possible. And so putting that on as a legislative priority, I think, is reasonable and helps our elected representatives, I think, advocate on our behalf more if we keep that. Anyway, it doesn't necessarily, I'm happy to see what staff comes up with, and we can negotiate what gets moved around if we need to, but all right. Is that enough?
Mayor and Council, that is enough. I would like to speak to the truck route a bit, because there has been some progress made. I think probably significantly to share, there have been a lot of conversations, and I think as those of us who participated in the legislative discussions last year, I think there is interest and support in the truck route improvement. At the same time, we've been consistently told in the conversations that we've had with WashDOT that due to fish barrier removal, the budget constraints are far too significant, as well as some of the pending election decisions and what that would mean to the overall state budget. We were not going to be successful with that. That said, we have applied for a number of grants. We have some pending grants right now that we're very hopeful actually move forward with funding of that project, including a pending raise grant. So probably more to share in the near future relative to the outcomes of the grants that we've provided. But right now we've put a lot of effort into it, but we're not seeing a lot of optimism amongst our legislators about what is to come in this budget cycle. And I think Councilmember Shulman Ward might be able to share a little bit more, being on the PRTPO.
We can just talk about it next time. Okay. All right. Let's move on to the discussion of who will be attending city action days. That's 3 council representatives historically. So last year was a weird year where there was that last minute change because the regular venue sold. And so it was a weird scramble, and we sent Lindsay and Drew, correct? Okay. So typically I go, and I didn't last year. I would be interested in going. I in the mayor position, not me specifically, but the position of mayor. And I would be I believe I am available to go. But I don't have to if there are other people who are interested.
Madam Mayor, I would also be interested in going this year.
Okay.
If possible, I'm always interested as well.
Okay.
I'm not available.
Okay. Lindsay, are you interested and available? Do you need to go for meetings?
Sorry, no, I don't have required meetings to go to. I am definitely interested in city advocacy days.
All right, Latricia.
I'll like to throw my hand in there too as an option to go if possible.
So it looks like Navarra is the only one who isn't interested. Well, we don't know about Amy because she's not here. So it looks like Amy will be at a different time. I would like to, I do think there is value in the mayor position being represented. So I would like to suggest that I do go. And I last year was able to attend the annual conference, but depending on how the calendar works out, I often can't for work. So be happy to do this one, and go ahead.
I have no issues stepping out to remove myself from the running because, as a quick reminder, as doing Wasili, council already approved me going to the annual one that's in June.
Okay.
So I'll already be attending that one.
Okay. So Lindsay, go ahead.
Yeah, there's not a limitation on us having 3 people. We do that basically so we don't have the potential risk of OPMA violations, but as long as we don't all hang out together, it's not a problem with us having more than 3 council members. That's just an option. Other cities sometimes send their entire council to AWC events.
That's true. I don't know what our budget looks like for it, which is the other consideration. All right, so we have Lindsay and Brendan and Latricia who would also like to go.
I haven't been to one, I think, since my first year on council, so it'd be good to get back in there.
That's true. So go ahead, Navarra.
I'd also like to just recommend that, I think as Drew sort of mentioned that I think we've tried to look at some equity and parity of who's going to what, and maybe make a commitment that the people who are going to this conference are out of the running for the first go round for the conference in June.
Yep, that seems reasonable. I went to both one year because I was on a committee for AWC that I had to be at the annual conference for, but I'm not this time. So
where's the June conference at?
Probably Vancouver or Spokane. It'll be in Vancouver. It will be in Washington. Vancouver or Spokane, probably.
It's Vancouver.
Okay. So
I could bow out to allow others to go. I think you've raised some
okay.
good points, especially Brendan, if you haven't been to but one.
Okay, so let's do we'll see what happens with Amy, but we'll do Brendan and Latricia and myself for this one, and then the other 4 folks will be have the option to attend the annual conference in the summer.
And that's actually Kennewick, according to the website. June 24th through the 27th in Kennewick is the annual conference.
Okay, and I definitely can't go based on the dates. So great. I'm happy to commit for 2 reasons to not attending the annual conference. Okay. So does someone want to make a motion to approve that?
I move to approve sending Latricia Suggs, Kate Dexter, and Brendan Meyer to the AWC days in February 18th and 19th, 2024.
Second.
All right. Anyone opposed to the motion, please state your opposition. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you all for working that out very nicely. Next, we have the Washington Cities for Quality Communities Scholarship consideration, and that is item I-4. Let me flip to that. And Nathan, do you want to talk about that?
So Mayor and Council, we did want to get this to you earlier this year so that we have good time for process. I know it came to us relatively late last year, but right now we're recommending a timeline where Council appoints a subcommittee to review and nominate a student this evening. And that's November 19th, obviously. On November 20th, we're recommending that staff would prepare a social media and website advertisement, and then staff would begin at that point collecting applications once we've provided that public notice and that put that opportunity out there. And then we would then ensure that we've decided on an overall application deadline, work with the 3 committee members to ultimately nominate our recommendation relative to student recipients for the scholarship. And I will say that we looked at last year's, they only received 29 applications and they receive up to 3 $3,000 scholarships. And I do know that this was an item of interest to Councilmember Miller, just sharing for the group.
All right. Do we have any volunteers for a subcommittee?
I'd be interested.
Okay.
I would also be interested.
Okay. And Amy? Were you saying she was interested in doing it or interested in being on the subcommittee?
I cannot speak to her availability on the subcommittee, but she was in the past highly interested in seeing this move forward.
Okay, very good.
I could throw my name in there. We did this once before,
Yes.
and it's very highly competitive, though.
Yes.
That's what I noticed about it.
Okay. Any other council members wish to participate? Okay. So we have a subcommittee of Brendan, Drew, and Latricia. Does someone want to?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
All right. Anyone opposed to the motion to approve the motion to for the subcommittee, please state your opposition. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Do we need council action to start the process for staff?
Mayor, no, not at this time.
Okay, very good. That brings us to the end of the business part of our meeting, and we'll go to council reports, and we'll start with Lindsay.
I'll pass, no report.
Brendan.
I'm also going to pass this evening.
All right. Navarra.
Yes, well, other than having lodging tax, which I think everybody heard about, I also had the distinct pleasure of getting to fill in for something that Kate usually does as mayor, which is attend Victoria Canada's Remembrance Day celebration ceremony. And it was really incredible. It's their sort of version of our Veterans Day. And I just really want to encourage people to attend in the future, just as community members. It is very different than anything we do here in the States, at least on the West Coast. And it was very powerful. There's lots of bagpipes, if that's a selling point for everybody. And it's probably one of the most sort of like British, like Commonwealth activities that probably I will ever attend. So after the ceremony, we got to lay wreaths. So I got to lay a wreath on behalf of the city. And then we went to some of the different like veterans organizations, like RVFWs. I just can't remember what they're called. But yeah, it was a really lovely time, and I'm really honored that I was able to go and represent us. And I think it was very meaningful that we had a representative there. It was like the mayor of Victoria, myself, and then a delegate from France. So I think sort of in the allies, I think it was more meaningful than I had expected it to be. So I'm really grateful to have that opportunity.
Thank you for doing it.
No, I totally forgot about this, and I don't know how I forgot about this, but it was last Friday night. There was a pinning ceremony at the firehouse, and we saw some of our heroes get promoted, and we saw some come and join the crew of there. So that was actually really exciting, and it was lovely to see them with all their families. It was like a little bit of a tearjerker, kids running down the aisle. It was a good time, and just really grateful for all of them. So thank you.
Thank you. Sorry to have missed that. Drew, go ahead.
Yeah, I've had a couple of things since the last council meeting. Thursday on the 7th, I went to an Olympic Peninsula Tourism Commission meeting. This time around, that was our kind of quarterly in-person one, and that was out at Seven Cedars. And we kind of went over what's going on. Some of the notes that I took was this, first off, the state, as far as percentage of budget devoted to marketing and ROI, has like one of the smallest budgets on the West Coast, and yet we have a really good ROI, and the websites get a ton of hits. So we are successfully doing, the state of Washington is doing a lot with not a lot of money. So I was very impressed by that. That Friday, I also had a comprehensive plan stakeholder advisory meeting where we all got together and kind of reviewed what we got from the recent public process and the different workshops that we've held so far, and kind of what our next steps are. And then I also had a brief North Olympic Peninsula Recompete Coalition, I always forget what our C is for this one, meeting as well, which basically was just a quick touch in saying that the federal funds are coming. The organizations that have been awarded funds are in their initial processes of being able to use those funds. And I think that's all I got for you tonight.
Thank you. Latricia.
I was I'm chair of the Clallam County MRC, so we had a meeting last night. We also participated in a strategic plan meeting earlier that day for MRC. But, we had some really great presentations at the MRC meeting. One was by Dr. Kelly Karim, and she did a presentation on Pacific lamprey and eDNA associated with that. And one of the fun facts that I learned is that lamprey are an ancient lineage of jawless fish, but they predate dinosaurs and they predate trees. I was just like, no way. And their teeth are their only bony structure in their body. They look like a snake, but they attach themselves to salmon as they go out in the ocean, but they live up to 7 years in the riparian area. So they're trying to figure out where the lamprey are located. Historically, there was quite a few of them here along the Olympic Peninsula and along the Columbia River. So they're doing eDNA samples where they filter the water and they are able to collect DNA samples out of the water, and it'll give you a picture of if there was lamprey DNA present. So it's just kind of like a one sample, one time in space that day. So they're able to kind of tell. So that was a really great presentation by Dr. Karim. So our MRC meetings tend to be fun with great presentations. So anybody wants something fun to do, come attend our meetings and you'll learn about things like this. So we had that. I have to go back to my, we also had an update from Northwest Streets Commission about future funding. And then we also presented on a list of priorities. It's in a final draft. We have one more version, but we're going to be presenting areas of concern, priorities from the MRC committee to the Clallam County Commissioners, things that concern the committee in regards to our surrounding Salish seas. So that's it.
Thank you. Nathan.
So Mayor and Council, a few things for you this evening. We do have the planned holiday party for December 7th at the Elks Lodge. Looking forward to that, and hopefully council can participate. Additionally, as a reminder, we do have as scheduled holidays the 28th and 29th of next week for Thanksgiving, and the following Friday, which will be public holidays for City Hall. Additionally, just want to say thank you to our teams that are out there right now in the storm, actively restoring power and working really diligently to keep everybody's power on. I know that we just had a feeder of 120 homes restored with only 20 known homes still without power, but we still have continuing tree events that are occurring that are causing additional outages, but really grateful to all of our emergency service crews and the public works team that's out there right now.
Thank you. I just realized I forgot to say that I don't have any report, but I guess that went without saying, perhaps. But in case it doesn't, I don't have a report tonight. So that brings us to our second public comment period. If you are online and wish to make a public comment, please raise your hand now. We're going to start with council chambers. So I know have at least one. John's going to come down, and then we have another person. You're welcome to wait till he's done and then come up. And thank you all for your patience.
Okay. Hi, John Ralston, City of Port Angeles resident. I forgot to say when I was talking about the bicycle paths, I wanted to commend Timothy Hayes, a relatively new employee of the city, traffic engineer, I believe. Did a great job at his presentation and did a great job with some interaction with me. That's hard to do. The other item I wanted to bring up, of course, deals with the city spending money. And I heard a small report on my Clallam County. It was some snippets of Nathan West's interview. I think it was on KOMP about some apartment type project or an investigation or something going on. I know I'd like to have a whole bunch of information about it. And I know there are others in the community that would like to have some information about it. So if you can get me on an email list or send me some data about it, because I'd like to talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you. And go ahead.
Hi, my name is Tara Arns. I live with family at 2427 Samara Drive in Port Angeles. I purchased a lot on Lauridsen Boulevard in February, meaning to put a manufactured home on it. My contractor let me know in April that I'm required to put a sidewalk in. There are not any sidewalks near this lot. The lots all around it and across from my property are all already developed. There will never be any other sidewalks installed to meet up with the orphan sidewalk. I asked the Public Works if there were a way to make an exception. Sean Armstrong and then Ethan Walker were very helpful in suggesting options to me, but those options are not available because I am not a developer, I'm an individual. One Public Works employee cited the following goal and policy as the reason no variances may be given. Goal G8A, to provide and maintain safe and financially feasible urban services and capital facilities to all city residents and the general public. Policy P8A.12 requires sidewalks to be included in all development and redevelopment proposals where sidewalks do not exist at the time of application. The goal and the corresponding policy are not in accord.
Implicit in the goal is that it is the city's responsibility to provide services, not an individual's. I am not a developer. I'm an individual attempting to secure housing in an already established neighborhood. The policy also does not address the goal's stated concern for ongoing safety and maintenance of the sidewalk. Orphan sidewalks are not safe, in my opinion, and they also require additional maintenance that normal sidewalks do not. I asked the Public Works Department if I was going to be liable for any accidents that may occur or for the ongoing maintenance. The response I received was, "This is more of a legal question, which I am not in a position to provide interpretation, but this is an interesting court case that I read if you're interested." Requiring a private individual to install sidewalks for the city is not reasonable, and expecting that individual to then shoulder liability for its safety and maintenance is also not reasonable. At any rate, I need housing, so I decreased the size of my proposed home to 600 square feet. My contractor started applying for permits in July. Each time he goes back, when we think we're there, he gets hit with additional requirements. I've asked him to halt applying for the permit. I'm at my wit's end. I asked the council to reconsider policy P8A-12. There are grants and tax credits to help developers install infrastructure. It's wrong to expect individuals to do so.
Thank you. All right. Nice quiet clap. Anyone else in council chambers? Okay, we'll go to you online. Donna, when you're unmuted, I will make sure I can hear you, and then I'll start your timer. Hello, now I can hear you. Okay, go ahead when you're ready. I'm going to start your timer.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and send a copy of what I'm saying tonight to you guys. So this is a follow-up to the letter I sent you all last week. I'm writing regarding the results of the trespassing hearing for Lynn Elon. I feel there are many inconsistencies in the ruling, most of which continue to make the city look bad in the public eye. To me and many others that I've spoken with, this decision by the hearing examiner just compounds the insult of the original decision to trespass. The facts originally relied on to justify the trespass notice were proven untrue. And in the end, the hearing examiner concluded Miss Elon was trespassed not for what she did, but for what Miss Geyer imagined she might do. To me, this is outrageous. So is the 3-year term of banishment that I do not believe was in any way appropriately addressed in the hearing. Continuing this unfair treatment makes no sense for the city, and the longer it lasts, the worse the city looks. As I stated in my letter last week, I continue to believe that you have the power to stop this whole fiasco well before this expensive legal proceeding. And in that vein, I am once again asking you to consider to, quote, commuting the sentence of 3 years to, quote, time served. Lynn has been banished from the senior center for over 6 months, and Gary Martin for even longer. There was never any accusation of violence or crime, yet the harshest penalty available was issued. Please don't let the community of Port Angeles believe that you, as a city manager, or indeed as city council members, endorse this or think it's fair. In an effort to help the community heal, I am hoping that you will, in good faith, offer an olive branch and let our friends return to the senior center. And I would also like to thank Nathan West, because I received an email today from him reaching out about this very issue. So I really appreciate that. I just wanted this all to be brought to your attention tonight as a group. So thank you.
Thank you, Donna. All right. Anyone else? No, you only get one turn. Yeah. But we'll see you next time. All right. That brings us to the end of our agenda. So we will be adjourned, and hopefully everyone still has power at home. And I would quickly echo Nathan's thanks for all the crews that are out working tonight. Thank you. Have a good night.